Hey everybody, this is CowTipper Vern again, talking about people's reactions to 2x2s leaving the 2x2 church. Last time, one of the reactions I talked about was the statement that when people see people leave the 2x2s, oftentimes they say they never really had it. Like, oh, we knew it all along. We knew they would do this. We knew that they didn't really have it. We knew that they didn't really believe, etc., etc. Right after I stopped recording that, I thought of another similar response that I've heard more in the religious community, the kind of the Christian community at large. Not so much from 2x2s, but a little bit. Every once in a while I hear it. And I feel bad when people say it, so I thought I should include it. It's sort of similar to the they never really had it response. Maybe it's an add-on to that. And that is when they say they didn't really have it because we didn't teach them. We hadn't taught them well. We should have raised them better. We should have taught them better. We should have taught them the Bible better. I wanted to include this one, even though I don't hear it much in the 2x2 communities. I do hear it every once in a while, and I wanted to include it because I feel kind of bad about it. I think it's the saddest response because the 2x2 belief system is based heavily on guilt, just making people feel guilty for doing normal stuff and living normal lives, just piling on guilt to the normal human experience. And when people feel responsible for other people leaving, but in a guilty sense, I actually feel bad about that. Now, I know last time I said, people do leave bitter and people have been offended and the people inside should take that more seriously. And I stand by that. But when people feel like their friends and family leave the 2x2s because they hadn't been cared for enough in the sense of they hadn't been taught the Bible well enough, they hadn't been taught the belief system well enough, they hadn't been cared for in that way, I think that's sad because I don't think it's true. And I don't think there's anything the people inside can do about it. I feel pretty confident in saying that I've never met anyone who's left the 2x2s because they didn't know the Bible well enough. Maybe some have chosen not to read the Bible very much or not learn it, not understand it. And maybe some just didn't jive with the culture or didn't jive with the teachings of the workers and things like that. But not understanding has never been a problem. First of all, I think that people who leave oftentimes think much more critically about the beliefs and about the teachings of the workers and about just the collective experience, the collective belief system that the 2x2s have, than anybody inside. The people inside are much less likely to talk about it. It's very hard to talk about, and they don't like to debate. They don't like to discuss it. It feels very unsettling and unpeaceful to question. They're taught not to question. So the people who question and learn, and I put those two words together because they are very similar. You have to question to learn. 2x2s are taught not to question, so the ones who question oftentimes are the ones that leave. The ones who question are often the ones who learn, and the ones who learn are often the ones who leave. People who leave, whether they leave to go to another religion, whether they choose another church, whether they choose a similar community but just a little bit different, or whether they leave and lose all belief completely, never go to a church again. Both of those two camps tend to know the Bible pretty well. They tend to be able to articulate the beliefs of the 2x2s really well, and they tend to know the Bible really well. I know much more about the Bible now than I ever did inside. When I was younger, I remember we used to look up to older brother workers who we thought had a lot of Bible knowledge. And as I've gotten older, I realized a lot of the stuff that passed for Bible knowledge was just stuff they made up. I'm not saying that to make fun of them or mock them or anything. I think they thought what they were saying was true, but a lot of times those understandings aren't correct. I've learned a lot about the Bible since I've left, and it's really interesting. I'm much more interested in it now than when I left, which probably seems weird to people, but I actually enjoy it. I listen to a lot of podcasts from Bible scholars. I've listened to lecture series. I've read books about it. It's really, really interesting to me, but it is not conducive to the limited understanding of 2x2 workers. 2x2 workers do not do that. They read the King James Version, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, and that's it. And whatever they get from it, whatever vibes they get from it, they turn that into stories. They skip around to find verses that sort of fit a narrative that they know that they should have, and they back the verses into that narrative. And that's basically it. So when people say, oh, they left because they didn't understand and because we didn't teach them, I just want to remove that guilt from those people. If you feel that way, if you feel like somebody you know has left and you're sad about that and you feel like you could have done more and you could have taught them better and you could have led them closer to Jesus or closer to Christ or taught them the Bible better or had the workers talk to them, I'll just relieve you of that guilt. You don't have to feel that. Don't feel bad about that. They didn't leave because they hadn't heard the workers talk enough. Another response to 2x2s leaving that dovetails off of the last podcast I did is a combination of the comment about X2x2s that they left because they're bitter or they left because they were offended. And it's the "they left but they can't leave it alone" comment. That is one of the silliest comments just because it sounds awesome. It sounds so cool to say. It sounds profound, like they left but they can't leave it alone. I bring this one up because I think I'm pretty sure I said it about some of my friends when they left. That's not good. I'm not happy. I'm not proud of that. I'm not happy about that. But I noticed that when people leave, they didn't just move on with their lives. They tended to talk even more about the 2x2s, where they came from. Well, let me tell you, I have too. I am one of those people. I'm one of those people that left and can't leave it alone. I mentioned a second ago that I've read the Bible a lot more. I have. I've also read the history of the 2x2s, and I'm fascinated by it, genuinely fascinated by the movement. I listen to conventions still. I still call into them when I can find numbers for them. I call into gospel meetings because I'm genuinely fascinated by it. Most people in the 2x2s have spent their entire life there. So when they leave, they're not leaving a thing they're doing. They're not changing teams they're rooting for. They're not voting for the other party. They're changing their actual life. I did a podcast recently where halfway through my answer to a question, something really hit me. The host of the show asked about how often 2x2s get converts and if new people join the group and grow the group. And I said, no, they really don't get a lot of converts. Very, very, very few people join the 2x2s. Very few people hear the gospel from the workers, come to a gospel meeting and profess. Most of the people who profess were raised in it. And as I was answering that question, a thought just hit me out of nowhere. Most of the 2x2 church, most professing people, the vast majority of professing people grew up professing, which means nearly all professing people never chose it. Nearly all professing people never made a choice to join the group. Now, 2x2 people play around with the language a lot, say things like, well, this person made their choice. But in reality, most professing people profess when they're very young, sometimes 6, 8 years old, more likely 10, 11, 12, something like that. Get baptized in their teens, maybe early 20s. But professing, making your choice to follow God in a gospel meeting is about the only choice we would say an 8-year-old is making on their own. Only the 2x2s would consider making a life choice that young to be a choice. They're not making a choice. I say only the 2x2s. That's not true. There's other churches that do the same thing. But the point is, most 2x2s were raised in it from a very early age. So when they leave it, they're not leaving a hobby. They're not switching some little part of their life. They're leaving their life. They're leaving all the credibility that they had with any other professing person. They're leaving family trees behind. They're leaving what their family probably thought was their own legacy. It breaks the hearts of their families. It's nearly physically painful for their friends and family who thought they would all profess forever. There's a lot of reasons for that, and we can talk about that. But yeah, when they leave, they don't leave it alone. When we leave, we don't leave it alone. It takes forever to process this stuff. Many people, as I've talked about before, have had terrible experiences inside, life-altering experiences. Oftentimes, their family didn't believe them. Even the ones who had good experiences, their good experiences were not their own experiences. Those experiences belonged to, finger quotes in the air, God. They belonged to the 2x2s. They belonged to the workers. They belonged to the concept of professing. When you're a 2x2, you don't own yourself. You don't have sovereignty. You don't make your own decisions. You're told from the first gospel meeting you ever go to in your life that you are not your own. You don't make your own decisions. You look for God's decisions. You don't have you. There is no you. And whatever there is of you is bad. All the good parts of your life are due to God. All the bad parts are you. All the bad parts of your life are your own fault. To change from that into something else is a complete change in life, a complete change in consciousness, in reality. Your entire reality is different on the other side. The patterns that were set when you were a child, the thought patterns that are in your head, your internal voice, all that stuff is set very young, and it'll be with you forever. I've talked to so many people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s who say, I still feel guilty when I do fill in the blank. When I do some little normal thing, I still have a voice that tells me not to do it. It doesn't make any sense at all. But when they were 3 or 4 years old, their parents yelled it at them or disciplined them for not doing it right or doing it wrong. They heard it from the platform. Workers with ad hoc, made-up theology ground guilt into these people, and it became their internal voice. When your internal voice tells you every single day that you're not good enough, then yeah, even when you leave that voice, even when you walk away, you'll still hear that forever. So yeah, they probably won't leave it alone. And I would say, nor should you. I would say you shouldn't leave it alone. I always recommend people go get therapy, go find support groups, which is part of why I helped create one. I think people should seek community with people who have similar life paths. I think it's important to just find support wherever you can find it, because what you've gone through is huge. It's a huge thing. And you may never be able to let it go, even if you want to. I've talked to a handful of people who thought they'd let it go, joined my support group, looked around in it for a while, read a bunch of posts, and nearly had panic attacks because all those memories that they thought had been repressed and beaten down all came back. They all came back up and made themselves known again and made the person feel the pain and the trauma and the horror and the self-doubt and self-hatred that they were raised with. No, they can't leave it alone because it won't leave them alone. It wouldn't be really healthy to just leave it alone. Just walk away and leave it forever and just, memory wipe yourself, Men in Black style, and move on to another life. It just doesn't work that way. It's who you are as a person. And as I mentioned, when you change your life and others around you didn't change their life, like your friends and family, that doesn't leave you alone either, because that's always part of your interaction with them. People who are disappointed in you for leaving likely were disappointed in you before too. That's pretty common. That won't leave you. That won't leave you alone. So no, you won't be able to just leave it alone. I think it would be silly to tell somebody to leave alone what raised them. It would be crazy to tell somebody to just leave alone this thing that built them. It's absolutely crazy to tell somebody to ignore the part of them that makes up who they are, whether they like it or not. Whether they want to keep that part of themselves or not, it's their foundation, and it'll always be there. It takes a lot of time to work on this stuff. No, you shouldn't leave it alone. And don't listen to people who think you should. There's no other place in life where someone would tell you to ignore a life-altering change and just move on and never think about it, never talk about it again. It doesn't make sense. It seems irresponsible to me, and it seems kind of unhealthy too. I can't think of another change in life that could happen to someone, especially a traumatic one, especially a life-altering one, life-changing. I can't imagine anybody going through something that altered their life, changed their life, changed who they were, changed everything about them, changed their friends, changed how they interacted on a daily basis with people around them, potentially changed their career, changed their relationship with their families, their friends. There's no other thing that could happen like that where people would tell you to just move on and ignore it. No one would ever tell you to just leave it alone. It would be all you talked about the rest of your life. That makes more sense to me. I say go ahead and talk about it. You don't need to leave it alone. In my opinion, just my personal uneducated opinion, it doesn't seem healthy, it doesn't seem reasonable, it doesn't seem like a good idea to just leave it alone. So everything up until now have been things that people say about people who leave, usually behind their backs, not often to them. Calling them names like bitter or offended, or saying they just don't have it anymore, or saying they left but they can't leave it alone. Usually they don't say that to people. The interaction directly with people who leave is a little different. It's pretty limited, honestly. There's not that many things that fall in that category. I was trying to think of a bunch and I really couldn't. Maybe you have some ideas, you can throw them in the comments. One really popular one is when people who leave have a family, especially with little kids. They say something like, well, what about your kids? They ask the people who leave, now that you've left, what are you going to do with your kids? What are you going to teach your kids? I think that's a really ignorant question, and I say that as someone who's asked it before. I'll raise my hand on that one again. I definitely asked some of my friends that when they left years ago. Those people kindly just put up with my dumb question, and to this day are still good friends of ours. If you have kids, it should be implied that everything you do is what you think is best for your kids. It may not look the best to somebody else, but that's somebody else. That's somebody who doesn't have to raise your kids. I've never in my life heard somebody do something and say, well, this is what I want to do. I don't know how it's going to work for my kids. Might ruin them. Nobody wants to ruin their kids' lives. Maybe some people are negligent. I don't know. I don't know anybody like that. I'm thankful that I don't know anybody like that. I don't think I know anybody who is purposefully negligent of their own kids. I think every parent wants the best for their kids, period. The hard part for a 2x2 to conceive of is that somebody leaving might be doing it because it's what they think is best for their kids. All of the previous examples that I've given of reactions are based in the misconception that there's something wrong with the person who's leaving, and or they're just going off to make themselves sinfully happy in some way or something like that. Like there's an obvious misunderstanding. They're being selfish, they're being evil. And when you throw kids into the mix, you all of a sudden feel bad for the kids. If you think all those things, if you think badly of people who leave, then you're also going to feel sad for the kids. This is another one of those things where I've never seen this. I've never seen somebody who has left and ignored the effect it would have on their kids. I know that leaving meetings had a gigantic effect on my kids, a huge effect. It changed the relationship they had with their friends, with some of their family, not all, but some. I'm really thankful for family inside and outside who've been very, very cool with us, who've been very understanding, who've tried to maintain great relationships with us. Not all have, and that's really unfortunate. It makes me really sad, but many have, and I'm really thankful for that. I really, really appreciate that. When I left, I had a lot to figure out. I still have a lot to figure out, but I'm doing all of that with my kids in mind. Everything that I do is because I care about my kids and want what's best for my kids. I've actually heard some people who completely lost their belief, including in God, but lost their belief in religion, lost their belief in any sort of organized anything, but took their kids to meetings for a while afterwards because they just didn't know what else to do. And they thought maybe it would be good for their kids, even if they didn't believe it. Maybe they go and they can't take part anymore, or maybe they go and they don't believe it, or they're not really even having that much fellowship for themselves, but they're taking care of their kids. They want their kids to have friends. They want their kids to maintain good relationship with their families. A lot of people know that when they leave, it does irreparably change their relationship with a lot of people. And in trying to maintain that relationship, in trying to avoid the chaos that is the relationship between current professing people and ex-professing people, they just go anyway and let their kids go. But that doesn't last very long. That's unsustainable. And eventually your kids start learning what you learned and all the things that you don't want them to learn, that you don't feel comfortable with. My only point in bringing all that up is just to say that families who leave meetings really do want to do the best for their kids. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but the question does come up a lot. And like I said, the fully believing, true believing me asked that same question. I think that part of me was thinking, your values must come from God. They must come from the Bible. They must come from meetings. Where else could they come from? When I asked that question, I think I was asking, well, what are your values now? The only way I knew how to ask it at the time was, why are you doing this? Why scrap the values you have? Why scrap the whole belief system you have and go off into the unknown? Why would you do something like that? Wouldn't it be easier to just keep doing this? When I was leaving meeting, I thought that too a few times. I thought, maybe I shouldn't do this. I have this whole prepackaged belief system, such as it is. Maybe it would be good enough to just keep it. But eventually I realized I just didn't want the culture for my kids. I didn't want them to have to grow up with the pressures that I grew up with. Nothing against how I was raised. Everybody does the best for their kids. But for me, that meant something a little different. For me, that meant separating myself from that environment, separating my kids from it and giving them a few more options in life. I did that out of love for my kids, and that should be obvious, but it's not. And I know it's not because it wasn't always obvious to me too. So I guess that's all I'll say about that. There's another subset of questions that come from the rare case where someone asks why someone left. I won't really get into these too much because, frankly, they're not that common. But now and then somebody will ask, when something crazy happens in the church, especially like what's going on right now with, we call it Brewergate, but it's essentially the SA/CSA scandal that's overtaken the group, that has gotten them national notoriety, that's gotten attention from the FBI, attention from media all around the world. A lot of people bring those issues up on their way out, and they're met with not a lot of helpful answers, definitely no reassurance. Some of the responses are, well, the way is perfect, but the people aren't. That's a really common one. That's like Shores of Galilee level trope. The way is perfect, but the people aren't. I don't know what that means at all. I know what they think it means, because they think they're just the only ones in the entire world who read the Bible correctly and follow Jesus exactly like you're supposed to. So that is correct. What that ends up meaning is, buns and skirts and no TVs and going to meeting 3 times a week. That's correct. Even if the people aren't perfect, if they just keep doing those things, that's good. That's right. Well, that doesn't answer the question. When people have questions about the way and the people inside flip that and turn that into a question about individual people, that doesn't actually help. That's not a constructive conversation. I'm not even really going to talk about it much more because it's not a useful conversation. The other thing that happens a lot when people are talking about scandals, like they are right now, is people inside respond by saying, well, a lot of churches have problems like this. A lot of organizations have problems like we're having. Other churches have had scandals too with CSA and SA. My response to that would be, I thought we were special. I thought we were the one true way. I've heard that phrase. One of the core beliefs of 2x2s is that they are exclusively correct. And they'll tell you that's not true, but it is. I've been calling into meetings ever since I left, especially gospel meetings and special meetings and convention meetings, and speaker after speaker mentions something about this way, doing it this way. They preach things that aren't in the Bible, but are a part of the way, meaning the meetings, meaning following the workers. People make a lot of sacrifices to be professing. They sacrifice innumerable things. Many things I talked about before, even on the last episode. People who are 2x2s dedicate their life to it. They do a lot to maintain their place. So when something happens and they ask, hey, why did this happen? And the response is, well, it happens everywhere. We're just like everybody else. That doesn't really fly. The whole point of doing what we do is because we're not like everybody else. The entire point of dressing like that, the entire point of weirdly not having a TV, the entire point of gospel meetings, fellowship meetings, conventions, the entire point is that it's the only way to do it. If there were other ways to do it, then people would do other things and you wouldn't worry so much about it. If it wasn't the only way, then when your friends and family leave to go to a similar church or another church, or maybe find a message in the Bible that the workers haven't approved of, you'd hear them out. You'd listen to them, but you don't. You're furious, you're angry, you're scared, you're horrified, and you don't want it to happen because you're in the only way. You're in the true way. You're in God's way. You're in what you call the truth. If someone calls themselves truth with a capital T, refers to themselves as God's children, refers to their method of worship as God's way, then I expect the best from them. I don't expect perfection because humans are imperfect, of course, but I would absolutely expect good solutions to problems, just on a basic level. I would never expect them to say, oh, well, we're just kind of like that group over there. Sometimes other people do bad things, so we do bad things too. My kids, when they were little, learned not to talk like that. It's the whole, if your friend jumps off a bridge, should you jump off too? No, you shouldn't. So when you're exceptional every single day until something goes wrong and then you're like everyone else, that doesn't really work. If you're just like everyone else, then why can't I have a TV? I don't mean to be trite about it, but come on. So those responses are just kind of silly and they don't make any sense. But again, they're automatic responses. They're responses that come from people right away. Anyway, that's enough of all that. The last common response I'll talk about is the most prevalent response. I left it till the end because I would say the vast majority, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but the vast majority of people who leave experience this particular response. All the other responses I've talked about happen here and there, and I notice them, and they're frequent enough that I feel like I need to include them. But this is the main response. This is the response that drives people to the support group that I'm in now. It's the response that ruins the most lives. It's the response that hurts the most. It's the response that is the most painful to process, ruins the most families, tears the most people apart. It's the response that causes the most people to seek support groups and therapy. And this response is nothing. The main response that people get when they leave high control groups, like the 2x2s, is complete silence, ignoring them completely. I left this one to the end because I want to talk about it a little bit. I think it's wrong and sad, it's damaging, and it's a result of damage. It's a result of fear. It's a result of being told for your entire life that you have to keep doing this one thing or God will throw you into hell, whether you believe or not. It's really awful. It's truly, it's torture. It's abusive. The silent treatment is abusive. I don't like to use the term abusive too much. I try not to use pop psych words too much, like these terms that people learn in therapy, and they're good terms, they're legitimate terms, and they're useful in the world. I try to be careful how I use terms like this, like abuse and trauma, but shunning people and giving them the silent treatment is abusive, I believe. I believe it is traumatic. I believe it causes trauma in people. I also believe it's the result of trauma. Hurt people, as the saying goes. If you grew up in meetings, you were not given tools to handle serious things. The tools you were given is to shut down completely, put it all on the workers, pray about it probably, nothing wrong with that, but never deal with it. We've all heard of fight or flight, or fight, flight, freeze as responses to something scary or something we perceive as aggressive or something like that, something we feel like we have to deal with. We either want to fight it or run away from it or freeze. I didn't know about the freeze one till recently, but that describes most people in the 2x2s. When something happens that they don't understand, that scares them, that worries them, there's not a lot of fight. Sometimes there's a little argumentation. Sometimes there's some argumentative conversations now and then. But there's mostly flight and freeze. There's mostly running away from the conversations or freezing and just not talking about them. Avoiding talking about the elephant in the room is one of the core things that 2x2s do. It's one of the main things they do because they're taught that their responses are bad. They're taught that they are evil. They're taught that everything about them is bad. Every emotion they have is bad. It's evil. Every thought they have. We shouldn't have our own thoughts. When we have emotions, we need to stunt those emotions. We need to not have those emotions. They're not good for us. They're bad for our spirit. We want God. We need to lean on God. We need to let God do it. I have nothing against prayer and leaning on God and trusting in God, trusting in higher powers. I have no problem with any of that. But teaching people to hate themselves takes away all the tools they might have when faced with a difficult situation. It is a very difficult situation when your friends and family have changes in beliefs or go through dark nights of the soul. It is scary. Your kids growing up and turning into adults can be scary because they might not be like you. They'll probably be a lot like you, but they might not be completely like you. People change over time, and rather than giving tools to handle it, the workers teach you that A, if you're going to meeting, you're fine. B, if you're not going to meeting, you're bad. And C, every feeling you have about it needs to be subjected. Every feeling you have about it needs to be pushed down. I'm no psychologist, but that sounds really unhealthy to me. I know that I've been like this too. When I was younger, I had friends that left meetings, and I didn't know what to do about it, so I just stopped talking to them. I figured I shouldn't communicate with them. I don't want that contamination event anymore, right? They're toxic now. I don't want to touch them. I wouldn't have said that to them, and I didn't really feel that way about them, but I knew that what was good for me was to stay close to meetings. So I just did that, and the effect of that was to pull away from them. Looking back, that happened to me too. People were doing that to me too, and that's okay. I don't blame them for that. There are a lot of people in my life who don't talk to me now. That's kind of obvious why now, being in a support group and all that, but it's sad. It's wrong. Shunning people is wrong across the board. There's no good reason to do it, but it is taught in the 2x2s. Probably a lot of people will doubt me when I say this, and that's okay, but I actually know workers who have gone house to house to talk to families who have other family members who have left meetings. And those workers have told them specifically to not talk to them anymore. There have been people in my support group who have stories like, I left meetings and a few years later I got engaged and went to get married and my family wouldn't come because the workers told them that it wouldn't be a good example for them to show that they supported my marriage to a non-professing person. Workers step into family matters a lot, and because of their status as workers, they're trusted. Their opinions are taken as if they know what they're talking about. Some workers do. Some workers are nice and kind. Not all are. Many are not. Many workers will tell you to tear your family apart because that's the right thing to do. And there are verses in the Bible that suggest that. I'm not going to get into the theology of it, but I understand how they got there. I think it's a bummer. And I think whether you believe in the Bible or not, you should really think long and hard about whether that's a good idea or not, if that's the life you really want. I'll leave that up to you whether it's the life you want, but I feel pretty comfortable saying that it's not a good life. When we first started having kids, I remember the moment, and I would say this is probably the first domino to fall for me toward leaving meetings, even though it was 10 years before I considered leaving. But I remember distinctly the first time I looked at my oldest kid and thought, I'm always going to love this kid. No matter what, even if this kid disappoints me, I can't chase this kid away. Now, why in the world did I think that? What a weird thing to think, in hindsight. What a strange thing to think. But I thought that because that's what's around me all the time. I was raised around families that would kick their kids to the curb if they didn't do the right thing, didn't live the right way. It's still like that. People inside, like I say, are still being told to do that, or are just choosing to do it themselves. To see their own family as subhuman because they don't go to meetings, because they don't go sit in the same spot and listen to the same people as them. They're just not as good anymore. And I literally remember where I was standing when I looked at my kid and thought, whatever my kid is, Whatever my kid grows up to be, I think God made my kid, so I'm going to love my kid, even if that doesn't look like exactly what I want. At the time, that was in terms of, going to meetings and stuff. But I decided very early on that even if my kids didn't go to meetings, I would still just love them just as much, and they could come to my house anytime, and I wouldn't talk to them different, and I wouldn't feel any different about them. That was just a decision I made, which is really strange when I look back. First of all, that I even had to have that conversation in my head. But I felt like I did. I had to sit there and work that out. My oldest kid was in a car seat, months old, and they did something, and I just looked at them and thought that. That's really weird to think about now. Why in the world would I have to do that mental exercise to talk myself into loving my own kid? But I felt like I did. I didn't connect that to the 2x2s at the time. Well, I sort of did. I thought of it in terms of professing, but I didn't connect it to the idea that the fact that I would have to talk myself into making sure I love my kid for their whole life was a direct result of being told that that wasn't the right thing to do, being around an environment that didn't treat kids that way. It's really sick to look back and think that I was trying to convince myself not to shun my own kid when my kid was months old. But I'm glad that idea did occur to me, and I stick to it, and I wish everybody did. Giving the silent treatment and recoiling and pulling back from your family and from your friends and from people that mean something to you because their views don't align with yours anymore says way more about you than it does about them. And I say that as somebody who has done that myself. It said way more about me than it said about my friends or even my family. I don't have a lot of regrets in life, but my one regret in life is that there are people I didn't keep in touch with who are no longer with us now, that went through faith transitions of their own. And I wish I could talk to them about that. And I wish I could tell them that I cared about them, because I can't now. That's one of my only regrets. Shunning your family and friends, not talking to them, talking behind their back because their faith has changed, and not talking to them about it is such a bummer. It's just such a bummer. And it absolutely seals in the mind of the person that left that they did the right thing. There is no doubt in my mind that leaving was correct for me, and it has nothing to do with belief at all. It has to do with culture. My beliefs are still changing, and I'm still learning about myself, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. I'm still learning about what to teach my kids. We have pretty open discussions in my family. My kids actually have some beliefs now, their own, and they talk to me about mine all the time, and I'm very open about it, and I love that I can talk like that with them. I can talk openly and honestly. They trust me because they know no matter what they say, I will never turn on them. I think that's really important. For my family dynamic, it's incredibly important, and it's part of the reason I had to leave. Not sure what else to say about that, but it's just something I feel very strongly. Over and over and over, people come into our support group and are just aghast at their experience in leaving. Almost every time, they're shocked that no one reached out to them. Every time they say, this is the most important thing. Isn't this the most important thing in our life? We're told this is the most important thing in our life every day. Every week we go and talk about how this is the life. We have truth. We need to be God's children. This is what we need. We need to read and pray more. We need the workers to talk to us. It's the most important thing. I dressed a certain way. I acted a certain way. My house is decorated a certain way. Because of this, because of who I am. I'm God's child more than I'm anybody's family. And when that changes, no one talked to me about it. If it's the most important thing, wouldn't somebody reach out? Wouldn't somebody say, hey, what's going on? Do you want to come back? Can we talk about why you're leaving? Nobody did. Nobody did for me either. One person did, sort of accidentally. To this day, no one's asked. To this day, 0 people have asked me why I left. And that's okay, nobody owes it to me, but it's just interesting, right? Isn't it interesting to think the most important thing in this person's life changed? They went through a wild experience. It changed how they talk, it changed everything they do, it changed how they live. You would think you'd want to know why. If it was my kid, I would absolutely ask, but not everybody feels that way. Nobody in the 2x2s feels that way. They don't want to talk to people. They don't want to touch the contamination. They don't want to get near someone who could take them away. The most important thing is them being in the way. You leaving the way isn't as important to them. It's important, and it's terrible, and they'll cry in their testimonies, but they'll never ask why. Because there's some fear there, I think. I'll diagnose them a little bit. I think it's fearful. I think it's a scary thing. I think that's all I'm going to say about that. I feel like I could go on for a really long time about the silence thing because it's just such a bummer. It's just so terrible. It just adds to the trauma that people already experience. It's surprising every time people come into the group and they're just shocked by it. They're like, how come nobody asked? Nobody wants to know? All my friends, my best friends in my life, my family, my parents even, my sibling, everybody who is closest to me has completely shut me out and don't talk to me. It's not a formal shunning in the 2x2s, nothing like the Jehovah's Witnesses who formalize it, or disfellowshipping like a lot of religions do. It's just the silent treatment. It's just ignoring it. It's just freezing. It's just backing away slowly so that you don't have to touch the terrible thing. It's just backing away slowly so that you don't accidentally get worldly on you. It's backing away slowly so that you don't accidentally touch the worldly thing and be worldly. I hope someday that changes. I hope that conversations get open more. I think they are, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm not really sure how to end this one, but I think that's the end. Those are the most common ways that people are treated when they leave. And those are my responses to them. I promised I would do one more thing, which is, now that I've complained about all the ways people are treated when they leave, I should probably give a little bit of effort to saying what would make more sense. I should talk a little bit about a good way to treat people who leave. This is a tough one because now that I'm on the outside, it's so obvious to me, it's hard to put it into terms that a 2x2 would appreciate. So if you're not a current 2x2, you probably already know this. You probably already feel pretty strongly about this. You probably wish you'd been treated better. Not that long ago, somebody in our group asked that question. They said, hey, I'm in contact with a lot of professing people. How would you like to have been treated? What could they have done better? How could they have treated you that would have made you feel better about things? And I got so upset about it. I don't know why, but it just rubbed me the wrong way. How would anybody treat anyone that they cared about? Being asked how you should treat somebody that you care about, that is close to you, having to be told how to do that is such a weird thing. I get it. I understand the question, but it's just weird, right? It's weird to think about. For someone to say, well, oh, you don't like all this. Well, how should we treat you? How should we talk to you? Do you care about the person or not? I think the question belies a really big problem, which is that the belief system in the 2x2s not only doesn't give tools to deal with real problems, but actually takes them away. So my answer is going to sound really simplistic. Think about someone you care about. Imagine they went through some bad thing. What would you like to do with them? How would you like to treat them? Just be normal, be nice. That's a good start. If you really care about them, you would ask how they're doing, what they went through, try to empathize in some way. Just treat them normally. Just treat them like normal people. To not do that, not treating somebody with just basic care and kindness, means that was taken away from you for some reason. Not knowing what to do or retreating into the silent treatment means you don't have the tools to handle the situation. And the fear of that and the confusion of that is making it very difficult to handle. Belief changes are normal. It's very normal for people to change over time. People's interests change, their taste changes, their personalities may even change a little bit. I don't know if that's scientifically accurate, but it seems like they do. People grow over time. The 2x2 belief system and the teachings of the workers make it harder to deal with that because they add a morality to it that just confuses the issue. Change is normal, but when you're taught that change is evil, it makes it really difficult to deal with. I've used this type of analogy, I've used this kind of answer for several different things. I think I may have even talked about it on some other podcasts, so bear with me, but when somebody who's professing asks, how should we handle something? Oftentimes I find that the answer is, go ask a random person on the street what they would do in this situation and do that. Oftentimes I think a random person on the street would have a pretty good answer to some of these questions. These are not hard questions. How do I treat somebody I care about who's gone through a life-changing event? Recently, when someone asked that in our group, like how should we do better with this? How should professing people do better with this? It was very strange because it's like my group is full of people who have had traumatic changes in their lives, who've gone through a lot, who've gone through life-altering scenarios, abuse in some cases. If you're going to go to a person who has been abused and asked, what's a better way to treat you? That's kind of insulting. But then again, the 2x2 people tend to believe that they are the center of the universe and everyone else are background characters, so they just want to know how to interact with the background characters. I'm not sure how many were actually asking. It might have just been somebody who was asking to play devil's advocate. I'm not sure. But my answer to questions of how should the 2x2 belief system interact with this thing is take the 2x2 part out. How would a random person who you would think of as a good person do it? And then do that. If your belief system makes it harder for you to handle normal stuff, maybe the belief system isn't giving you the tools and you need to look for other tools. I think that's all I'm going to say about this. I know that last one should have been a little more constructive and it was just me ranting, but that's how I feel. If I had my way, everybody 2x2, current 2x2s and ex-2x2s would be able to get along and talk about beliefs and respect each other and be kind to each other and just show their love for each other. I'm sure they love each other, but they have a hard time showing it because they've been told not to. And I think that's really a bummer. And I think that all these questions that current 2x2s have, or moreover, their tendency to not ask questions at all and just make comments, those things all just convince the people who left that they did the right thing. It's definitely helped me understand that I did the right thing in leaving. When I realized that the belief system I had was causing me the problems, it was adding another layer onto my problem, it was giving me another thing to deal with rather than helping me out, then I knew I had to let go. I'll talk more about my own story some other time, but that's very clear in my head now, and I'm glad I left. I'm not saying everybody should leave. I don't think I've ever told anybody they should leave, but I hope that the people who stay can be a little more open and a little bit more humane and normal. I hope that at some point in the future, people who leave and people who stay can be on even footing and talk to each other and love each other and care for each other. And just be normal. I think that's all for now. If you have some other ideas for reactions or things, if you have some other experiences that you feel I should have touched on, or you feel are common that I didn't really note, feel free to put them in the comments and maybe I'll talk about them later. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.